I love MC5. Kick Out the Jams by MC5 is one of my favorite rock songs ever. It is just raw, soulful, pounding rock and roll. They don't make bands like that no more. And if they're finally being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, this is fantastic. If you don't know who they are, find their performance of Kick Out the Jams from 1972. Any performance by them is fine from the late 60s, early 70s. But Kick Out the Jams 1972, make sure you check that out and you see what I mean. If the best way for me to describe them is like they're the Who meets James Brown mixed in with Jimi Hendrix. They're just powerful, man. Just a powerful act. They dropped their debut album in 1969, the same year as Iggy Pop and the Stooges. The reason I'm putting them two together is that they both came out of the Detroit rock scene. So if we look at the 60s in Detroit, is the Motown 60s. And the thing that happened with Motown and with James Brown and Stax is that there was a lot of rock acts that came through in the 70s who had very soulful sounds. If you listen to Foreigner, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, Leonard Ronstadt, Hart, Michael McDonald, of course. Like, there's a lot of soulful acts, a lot of rock acts who had soulful vocals just because of the Motown 60s. You don't get that too much in rock today because soulful singing is not as prevalent as it used to be. So there's a soulfulness to rock and roll that you just don't get today. MC5 and the Stooges came out of Detroit in the late 60s, early 70s. And the rock era of that time period, you had MC5, the Stooges, Bob Seger, and Kiss. And there's a bunch of other bands too, but they're to me is the most, those are the ones that I know. Of course, the biggest and the baddest meaning good, bad meaning bad, name bad meaning good, is Kiss. Because as a kid, as a young dude, I was like, oh my God, Kiss. Because of the makeups, the pyrotechnic, the songs were good. The way they rocked in unison was good. The face paint that Peter and Ace and Paul and Gene had just stuck in your mind as a kid. The lunchboxes, the specials, all that stuff. However, musically, I'm putting them at number 4 musically. If I had to rank them. Then you have Bob Seger. Bob Seger, Springsteen-like, he's in his own different category. He's different than the rest of these acts. Bob is like over here, right? Now we get to Iggy Pop and the Stooges are number 1, MC5 is number 2. Iggy Pop is number 1 because you can take any of those Stooges albums from that late 60s, early 70s and play them any decade and it kills. Iggy Pop and the Stooges, along with MC5, but Iggy Pop and the Stooges were the precursor to punk. I'm telling you, you can grab any song and play it for a kid and they feel like it's new. That's how forward Iggy Pop and the Stooges were. But right next to them was MC5. I would have hated to be an act playing after MC5 because MC5 didn't have a whole lot of hits. But when they did produce, they produced hard. So if you're the Who and MC5 is coming before you, it's like, no, we're great. But these guys will blow off the stage. If I'm James Taylor, and James Taylor is wonderful. If I'm James Taylor and somehow I'm playing my folk music and MC5 is my opening act, I got to cancel my tour. I cannot perform Fire and Rain after them. These dudes are so good. The lead singer, Rob Tyner, with his afro, I think he's white, but still, it was just like this big fro bouncing on stage. He holds his mic like Roger Daltrey from The Who, but he says stuff like James Brown, like, get it? Come on now. Oh my God. He jumps off the stage. The guitars, just echoes of Hendrix in these guitars. Like, listen, no one can top Hendrix. Like, come on. But still, there's echoes of Hendrix in the guitars. The drums are pounding away like John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. MC5 is magnificent, man. And again, they didn't have a whole lot of hits, but the hits they did have, fantastic. So what I think is what's happening now is that, of course, they weren't going to be a first ballot entry into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it took Kiss a long time to get in, right? Because MC5 didn't have a whole bunch of hits. What I think was going on now, so now they're inducting people from the 90s. And as we move along in the decade of the 90s and we head towards the 2000s, there's fewer and fewer rock acts to induct as we move into the 2000s. And it's going to be very interesting to me when we get to like Nickelback and Creed. Will they be first ballot Hall of Famers, or it's going to be a long time before they get in? Because everybody swears today that they're not a fan of Creed or Nickelback, especially Nickelback. Now, the last time I checked, Nickelback was not played on hip-hop and R&B stations. So I know a whole bunch of black folks were not buying albums by Nickelback or Creed. So, for all these people say, I don't know who bought these records, but somebody did, because both those groups are multi-platinum. So it's going to be interesting to see who will start being inducted when it comes to rock, because there's fewer and fewer rock acts as we move along. Once we get past the grunge era, there will still some rock acts, but some of them stick around, like the Strokes. The Strokes were great, but will they get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Because their career, it was a good career, but not a great career. So the 2000s is going to be very interesting. Like Maroon 5 will probably get in, but people will probably complain, well, they're not rock and roll. Like, yeah, well, what choice do you have at a certain point, right? So when you see MC5 getting inducted, when you see Peter Frampton getting inducted, and you see like Foreigner finally getting inducted, it's partly through voting, but it's also because the voters are looking back, saying, wow, there's fewer and fewer rock acts as we move along into the 90s, and now we're going to get into the 2000s. Which rock acts should have been in here a long time ago that should have been inducted? That's why we have Foreigner, and that's why we have Frampton. All these acts should have been inducted years ago. And MC5 has been so influential. I don't even comprehend the fact that they weren't inducted before, but they were such an influential on punk, on rock, on Southern rock. They are amazing. They are amazing to me. Now, you might listen to it and it's like, oh my God, Kev, that's a bunch of noise. I understand. But if you're into rock, if you like rock music like me, right, and you're looking for an act that you never heard before, check out MC5. MC5 is fantastic. So as I end this, give me some rock acts that's underappreciated. Either A, they didn't have a whole lot of hits, maybe they were a regional band, whatever. But give me a rock act like MC5, who was very influential, maybe didn't have a whole lot of hits, but when you play them for people, people say, wow, who is this and where can I get that album?